Hi, everybody. We are on Daf 139. Quite a lot of interesting topics. We're going to start with an Agadah about the corruption of judges. And they'll move into Agadah, three Agadot from the same Rabbi Milai. And then we'll go back to Halacha. We have three questions that were asked of Levi. Turns out he died, and so someone else answered the questions. And then we go back to some more laws about making tents. And then a few examples of an artifice, ha'adama, using a loophole in order to do something on Shabbat or Yom Tov. So it's quite a lot of different topics, agadot and halachot, but we're going to see there's one theme that runs throughout, which is ignorance of the law versus knowledge of the law. And then we'll get to the next Mishnah, which is about straining. Okay, so we start with the Agadah that we saw yesterday was about in the future days, Torah will be forgotten, it says, right? And we discussed what that means, not Torah altogether, but some of the details of halacha, that the law will not be clear in one place, and you'll have to really search out to find clarity of the meanings of certain laws. Okay, so on that theme of the ignorance of the law, now we're going to talk about corruption of judges. Tanya. Rabbi Yosef ben Elisha Omer, Im ra'ita dor shesarot rabot ba'ot alav, seu b'dok b'dayanei Yisrael. Says if you see a generation that there's many troubles, a lot of persecution, so go and check, not the mezuzot, but rather go and check the judges in Israel and see if they're doing a good job. Shekol puranut sheba la'olam lo ba'a ela b'shbir dayanei Yisrael shenemar shimu na zot rashi bet Yaakov u'ksnei bet Yisrael mit ta'abim משפט ואת כל הישרה יעקשו בוני ציון בדמים בירושלים בעוולה ראשיה בשוחד ישפוטו וכהניה במחיר יורו ונביאיה בכסף יקסומו ועל השם ישענו. So according to Pasuk in Micha, it says, go out and listen, the heads, the officers of Israel, those who abhor justice and pervert equity, who build up Zion with blood and Jerusalem with iniquity, right there. Heads, they judge for bribes. The priests, they teach only for hire. The prophets, they divine for money. In other words, you go hire a prophet, you give him money, and then he'll say whatever you want him to say. In other words, all the religious leadership are corrupt, and so that's when destruction happens, right? When the judges are corrupt, then the whole judicial system falls, and that's it. There's no more morality in society. Yet these people, they're not afraid because they rely on Hashem. They say God is in our midst. They're looking, the Beit HaMikdash is up, so we'll be okay. The enemies will not harm us, and they are very wrong. In fact, these are evil people, and they hypocritically rely on God to save them, but God's not going to save them because of their evil deeds. לפיכך מביא הקדוש ברוך הוא עליהם שלוש פורענויות כנגד שלוש עבירות שבידם, שמלאכים בגללכם ציון תשדה תחרש וירושלים עיין תהיה והר הבית לבמות יער. Because of the three sins, the three groups that were the Kohanim, the judges, the Kohanim, and the prophets, each one corrupt, so too there's going to be a triple punishment of Zion, of Jerusalem, and of Har Habayit, the Temple Mount itself. And God will not restore His Shekhinah upon Israel until they get rid of those corrupt judges. As it says, Ashiba, I will return my hand upon you, and I'm going to purge your dross as with lye, kind of a ancient soap, and I'm going to remove all those dregs, all those impurities, and I will return your original judges. Ashiba Shofetai Ki Berishona. By the way, this pasuk from Yeshaya is the source for the beracha that we say in Amidah, right? To bring back the judges, righteous judges. Okay, and so that's very important, powerful Midrash. Amad Ola, En Yerushalayim Nifta, Ela Bistaka, Shnema Sion, B'mishpat Tipadeh V'Shabeha Bistaka. Jerusalem will similar idea, will be redeemed through righteousness, through justice. Pasuk says that clearly in Yeshaya. Amar Papai Batli Yehire, Batle Amgushe, Batle Dayane, Batle Garzipate. So more things that we have to get rid of in order to make things better. If you get rid of arrogant people, then Amgoshe, we saw this word earlier, Magosh. It's a source. It's a Persian word. It's a source of the English word magic. These are magi. These are Persian Zoroastrian priests, right, who they considered fire holy. So if you they would persecute the Jews, and so if you get rid of the arrogant Jews in leadership, then that persecution will stop. And if you get rid of the Dayanim, these deceitful judges, then these Gazir Pateh, meaning it's an Aramaic word meaning official, or a Sasanian functionary. Okay, again, regarding the Babylonian Persian context. So those taskmasters will go away. Yeah, how do we know that? We quote Pesukim for each. Ibatli Yehire Batle Amgushe Dichtiv Esrof Kabor Si Gaich. So since right, I'm going to purify as with with lie. So Sigaich is also Sigim, the haughty ones, and the continuation of the pasuk is talks about Muvdalim, those who are separate from fire. So we have a hint to it. So if you get rid of the mishpataich, the evil judges, then God will get rid of your enemies as well. Okay. Amar Rabbi Milai, Mishum Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon. This is the first of his derashot on the same topic. My dichtib Shabbat Hashem Mater Reshaim Shevet Moshelim. That God has broken the staff of the wicked and the rod of the rulers. Shabbat Hashem Mater Reshaim Elu Hadayanim Nasu Makel Lechazanehem. Right in Peshat, you might think it's just evil doers, whatever, Syrians, Babylonians, but he brings it. The Midrash brings it closer to home. These are judges that were made into staffs by the Chazanim. Now, Chazanim doesn't mean what we mean it today, cantors, but rather Chazanim were the officials, the the leaders in the Bet Knesset, leaders in the community. And because they had control over the Dayanim, they could do whatever they want, and the Dayanim would support them. And so they were complicit in the injustice that was going on. And so the rod of the rulers, this refers to sages who were family members of the judges. And because of that, they would get the judges into their, they would use their position to get family members be appointed as judges, and they would help out the judges to do injustice by giving them false arguments that they could use. And similarly, Mor Zutra Amar El Tamidei Chamim Shemelamedim Hilchot Sibor LeDayane Bur. He says this refers to sages who teach public administration to judges who are ignorant, and so they give them just enough information so that they can keep their job, but they don't do their job well because they really are not trained and not worthy. Amar Rabbi Eliezer ben Malai Mishum Resh Lakish. So again, the same sage. My dichtib ki chapehem nigoalu bedam bes beotechem beavon siftotechem deberu sheker leshonchem avla tehege. That pasuk in Yeshayahu. Your hands are defiled with blood, your fingers with iniquity, your lips have spoken lies, your tongue utters wickedness. Who is Yeshaya referring to? So it goes section by section. Right, your hands are filled with blood, they're making false judgments, and by doing that, they can give someone the death penalty falsely. So they're murderers. elu sofrei dayanim, and your fingers with iniquity. These are the scribes that were worked in the court scribes, and they would write up, false documents. Siftotechem diberu sheker, elu orchei hadayanim, and lips have spoken lies. These are the orchei dayanim. These are the lawyers. Although the Batei Din in the rabbinic courts officially didn't allow lawyers in the court, but they would, on the side, go and tell the litigants, say this, do this, and show them loopholes. The Roman courts, of course, were full of lawyers, and so they felt that the lawyers are not good because they're full of lies. Okay, of course, today everything is much better. All right, I refer to this, I quote the statement in my book, and I'll have a whole a chapter about lawyers in Roman courts versus rabbinic courts. So I think this typifies what the rabbis thought of them. Leshonechem avlat, although the bad ones, just like the bad judges. Leshonechem avlat tegelu ba'alei dinin, and the tongue utters wickedness. That's the litigants themselves. They also are coming and lying, and so see the whole justice system is all corrupt. Amar Rabbi Melai, Mishum Rabbi Yitzchak Migdala'a, Yom sheperesh Yosef me'achav lo tam yayin dichtib ul kol kod nazir echav. Okay, it's the same rabbi, but teaching a midrash on a completely different topic. Although the topic of wine does come up in a lot of different places and other ways. Anyway, this from the day that Yosef left his brothers, he did not drink any wine at all. I guess out of sadness, as it says in the Beracha at the end of Bereshit given to Yosef, it says Ul Kol Kod Nazir Echav. It's the head of he who separated from his brothers. Nazir is someone who separates. So I guess Yosef was in fact separated from his brothers, but since Nazir also typically is the person who separates from wine, so the Midrash says that Yosef did not drink any wine like a Nazirite. Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Chanina Amar Afhen lo tamu tam yayin dichtiv vayishtu vayishkeru immo miklad ad haydana lahava shichrut. So and Rabbi Yosef adds, the brothers also did not drink any wine from the time that they sold Joseph. I guess they felt bad, they felt guilty, and they couldn't enjoy themselves with drinking wine. How do we know that? Because when they do come down to Egypt and they meet with Yosef, they drink and they get drunk with him. And so that's the first time we hear them doing that. That means that we can infer that. They didn't do that before. The first opinion that says only Yosef didn't drink. So what does he do with this pasuk? He says, oh, well, they drank, but they never got drunk before. They only drank a little bit before. And this is the first time that they were, they drank with great happiness. Okay. Good. Of course, that pasuk actually in context is talking about when they met him first, and they didn't know it was Yosef yet. So why are they getting drunk and they don't even know it's him? And this could be dangerous to get drunk in front of the second in command and all that. So okay, but maybe they're implying that it's after that they knew who Yosef was, they got drunk or something like that. Okay, Amar Rabbi Malai, so his third derasha, Bischar v'ra'acha v'samach b'libo, zachar lechoshen mishpat al libo. So because when Moshe was going out and he says, send someone else, I can't speak, and Hashem said, Aaron's going to come and help you, and he's going to be so happy to greet you. And you see that Aaron, although he was the older brother, he wasn't jealous of Moshe. Aaron was okay to be the second helper and Moshe be the leader. So because of that great humility and not being jealous of his brother, he got merited to be able to wear the Choshen Mishpat on his chest. Shalchu le bnei Bashkar leLevi. Okay, so now we finished with these beautiful agadot. And now we get to three matters of halacha that the people of the city of Bashkar, it's a city outside of Israel. I'm not sure where it is, maybe in Bavel, but we're going to see it's a it's a place where the community of Jews was ignorant, somewhat ignorant of halacha. I mean, well, these are somewhat sophisticated questions, so they knew something. Okay, but maybe this was the leaders there. They had 3 questions to ask of Levi, who lived in Eretz Yisrael. Kila mahu, wants to know about the canopy on spreading out a canopy on Shabbat. Kishutad becharma mahu, are you allowed to plant hops in a vineyard because of kilayim? Is that allowed? And met b'yom tov mahu, if someone dies on Yom Tov, are you allowed to bury them on Yom Tov? Those are 3 questions. Ad de'azel, anach nafsheh de Levi. By the time the messenger got there, I guess it was a long way, not good communication, Levi had died, so he couldn't ask him. So Moshe said to Menashia, if you know the answers, then you should respond. You know, you'll take the place of Levi and give them the answer. So he does, and he sends back, Shalach lehu kila, chazarnu al kosi de kila velo masinu la sad heter. So we checked every possible permutation, and there's no way that you can set up a canopy, like a canopy bed on Shabbat. Sorry, no way to do it. Now the Gemara interrupts and says, hold on, remember yesterday we saw that Ami Bar Chezkel says, if a canopy is tied already to the pole, to the frame, then you can extend it out because it's already there. And so there is a permitted way to make a canopy. Why didn't he tell them that? Because the people in that city, most of them were not versed in Torah, and so therefore, if you tell them this distinction, they're not going to really understand it, and they're going to think, oh, you're allowed to make a canopy. They're not going to remember. You can't trust them to always tie it first before Shabbat. So better to tell them a blanket. No, there's no way to do it. And then he answered them and he said, hops in a vineyard, you're not allowed to put the plant hops in a vineyard. Okay, so hold on. Now the Gemara interrupts. So we see there's actually a machloket about it. And although the majority of sages say it is kilayim, what does this depend on? Depends on if you consider hops a tree or a vegetable. If it's a tree, then it's okay because you can plant a tree together with grapes. And so that's what Rabbi Tarfon thinks, that there's no problem of kilayim in a vineyard, you can put the hops in it, it's a tree. Hachamim say no, it's a type of vegetable and therefore it's a problem. So there's a machloket here. Now, although the majority opinion says it's not allowed, so, however, their machlok was only in Israel, where the laws of kilayim are strict, or doraita. But outside the land of Israel, it's the rabbanan. And therefore, anytime there's even any lenient opinion outside the land of Israel, you can rely on the lenient opinion. And these people who asked the question are from outside the land of Israel. So really, they could rely on the Bitarfon and allow them to plant. So how come the rabbi said he don't do it? Same answer, Lefi Shenan B'nei Torah, because the people in that city are not versed in Torah, and if you tell them this, they're not really going to understand why and the reason. They're going to plant other things, and so better to make a blanket. No. Machriz Rav. Now, more on this before we get to the third topic. A little bit more on this topic of the vineyard. Machriz Rav, Hayman de'bayan mizra kishuta b'charma lizra. Rav, who lived in Bavel. He would announce anyone who wants to put hops in the vineyard, it's okay. It was his city, his people were knowledgeable, he would check over them. Rav Amram Hasidam in Naged, Rav Amram, he would whip people, anyone who did that. So he was not so tolerant of it in his place. Meshashia would do something else. He would give a coin to a non-Jewish kid and said, here, go and plant them. So in other words, he thought it was allowed, but he didn't want a Jew to do it himself. Hold on, once you're giving it to a child, give it to a Jewish child. What's the difference? I mean, children are not chayav. No, you don't want the child to get used to this, and then he's going to grow up and keep doing that. So you don't have to give. That's not a good idea to give it to a kid. It's a good lesson in education. Okay, if you're giving it to a non-Jew, give it to an adult non-Jew. Then people won't know their reason. They're going to think that it's okay, and they're going to give it to an adult Jew. So therefore, you do it 2 steps removed, and people won't come to do it themselves. Okay. Now, the third thing that they asked was regarding someone who dies on a Yom Tov. Are you allowed to go and bury them?
Like, is
Uh,
that that they
well,
think they will confuse him for a Jew and think it's okay? Is that the idea?
not that confused. I don't know, but I think they're going to confuse. They're going to see that someone is doing it, so they're going to think it's allowed. I mean, maybe he's just doing it because he's hired and he works there, but not specifically because he's a non-Jew. Whereas kids, non-Jewish kids, is not usual. So that's more of a heker sign that's different.
Okay.
Okay. Dies משלחו להם, מת, לא יעסקו בה, לא יהודאין ולא ארמאין, לא ביום טוב ראשון ולא ביום טוב שני. So he answers and says, someone who dies on Yom Tov, you cannot bury them. Not Jews, not non-Jews, not on Yom Tov Rishon, not on Yom Tov Sheni. You got to wait till after the holiday. Nowadays we have refrigerators. It's not a big deal, but those days it's really, it would be desecration to wait. But okay, that's what he said. You can't violate Shabbat or Yom Tov. Ini, hold on, is that true? Same with all the other things, right? I mean, the rabbi answered all these people from the city all in a negative. But we know from other sources it's allowed. So Hamad Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shelat Amar Rabbi Aseh Obada Hava Bebe Kinishtat Demaon Yom Tov Hasamuch LeShabbat. It was a case like this. Someone died on Yom Tov in a synagogue of Ma'on. It's a place near Tiberias, and it was back to back with Shabbat. We're not sure. We don't remember if it was Yom Tov was on Friday or Yom Tov was on Sunday. That doesn't matter. The point is, they asked Rabbi Yochanan right there in Tiberias next door, and he said, "Let non-Jews bury the body. If it's before Yom Tov is before, so then you don't do it on Yom Tov, then you certainly don't do it on Shabbat. Then you got to wait till Sunday, right? Or similarly, if it's on Sunday, well, you could do it the next day." But he said, no, you don't have to. You can bury the person on Yom Tov, on Sunday. So why did the rabbi answer the people of that city and say that's not allowed? And furthermore, another statement that's allowed. Met b'Yom Tov Rishon yitaseku bo amamin. B'Yom Tov Sheni yitaseku bo Yisrael. Not only that, he's the rabbi is in Chutz La'aretz, so there's 2 days of Yom Tov. If someone dies on the first day of Yom Tov, then non-Jews should bury him. On Yom Tov Sheni, which is lesser importance, it's only midrabanan, once you have a set calendar, then even Jews can go out and bury the person on Yom Tov Sheni. Afilu b'Yom Tov Sheni shel Rosh Hashanah, not just a regular Yom Tov, even Rosh Hashanah, Hashem ken bebesa. Usually Rosh Hashanah is 2 days, not in the Torah. Torah is 1 day. But because we're not sure what day it is, so everyone does Rosh Hashanah 2 days. But the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah is more strict. Consider them kind of like all one long day, to the extent that if an egg is laid on the first day, we don't eat it on the second day either, because it's new, nolad, and we consider it mukseh. That's a law only for Rosh Hashanah. On Rosh Chodesh, if it's laid on the first day, then you can eat it on the second day, because either yesterday was okay, was chol, and so now I can eat it because it was prepared, or today is chol, and then I could do anything. You could do either way. So we can take into consideration safek on a regular Yom Tov, but not on Rosh Hashanah. However, for the purpose of burial, we even will allow a burial on Rosh Hashanah. So we have all these cases, all these rabbis that say you can bury on Rosh Hashanah, on Rosh Hashanah, on Yom Tov, either by a Jew or by a non-Jew. And so why didn't he answer this? Because the people of Bashkar, in this city, they were not B'nai Torah. And if you go and tell them you're allowed, in any case, they're going to get all confused. They're going to think it's allowed on Shabbat. They're going to think it's allowed by a Jew even the first day. And so better to tell them across the board, no. Okay, all right, so anyway, we have a good lesson. It's good to be knowledgeable of halacha. So otherwise, you have to be more machmir. When you don't know, then you have to be more machmir. Halacha l'maaseh, of course, we do bury not on Shabbat ever, and not on Yom Tov Rishon, but Yom Tov Sheni, we do it with non-Jews. Non-Jews drive, and a family member can go. And even on Rosh Hashanah is actually a big machloket. And this happened in the community, and a A lot of people said no, but officially on on Rosh Hashanah also should be allowed.
Yeah, David had an uncle who was buried second day of Rosh Hashanah. It was many years ago.
Right. Okay. Yeah, but I know that not everybody agrees with that, but I think that is the official halacha. So, okay. So thank goodness we're not considered an ignorant community, and so we can rely on these halachot. Amar Rabbi Avin, Amar Rav Huna, Amar Rav Hama Bar Guria, mitatef adam bechila ubechaskeha v'yotzei l'reshut rabim b'Shabbat v'eno choshesh. Go back to tents. This canopy. Let's say I'm not putting up the canopy. I want to wear the canopy. I want to wrap it around like a robe. That's okay, even though the canopy also has strings attached, has straps. And the straps are not keeping me warm. The straps aren't important to me, but it's okay. It's not considered carrying. The straps are just part of it. You can have a case like this, maybe like an overcoat with a belt. Just hangs out there, and you don't have to worry about carrying. Hold on, we have a question about this. If you wear a talit, you can wear a talit on Shabbat. A lot of people do that. Right now, I live outside the Eruv, so I wear my talit to Kenis. So you're allowed to wear a talit. However, if it's missing one of the tzitzit, it has three, it's missing one of them, then it's considered carrying. You're not carrying the cloth because the cloth is you're wearing, but the other three tzitzit are not doing anything. There's not a mitzvah. And so therefore it's considered carrying chayav chatat. So what's the difference between the straps of a canopy where you said it's okay and the sisiyot of a non-kosher talit where you say it's a problem? Sisit lagabe talit chashibe v'la batle ani la chashibe ubatle. The other three sisit are important to me. I want them there because I'm going to want to fix it. I want to add the fourth one and make it better. So in other words, sisit are something important in and of themselves. Whereas the straps, they're useful when I'm hanging it up, but I don't care about the straps when I'm wearing it. I don't need them when I'm wearing it. So therefore, they are batel, they are negated, but the sisit are not negated. And so that's the difference between the two cases. Amar Rav Huna, he's the one that asked the question here. No, that's Amar Rav Huna Barab. Okay, different. Anyway, so now we get to the various cases of using an artifice to permit something, which is a similar theme what we were talking about before, where in the previous examples, something is mutad lahalacha, but we're mahmir for people who are ignorant. But here are things that are technically not allowed, but we can find a loophole. We're going to see that these loopholes are only useful for if anyone could use them, or if only Talmid Chacham can use them. Okay. So anyway, the first one is Ma'arim Adam al Mashmeret B'Yom Tov Etlot Ba Rimonim Betole Ba Shemarim. Okay, this is the Mishnah that we started with. That you can hang. You take a strainer, a cloth, right? That's shaped like a strainer. So are you allowed to hang it over a barrel? So we said basically you're not allowed to hang it on a Shabbat, not even on Yom Tov. However, you can use a trick. If I hang up this strainer in order to put pomegranates in it, I want it to be a pomegranate holder. Well, then it's allowed. So I'll do that, and then I change my mind and I say, oh, you know what? I'm gonna use it for straining. Okay, so that's allowed. Rav Asher adds, Amar Rav Asher, only works if you actually put pomegranates in it, right? You can't just change your mind without actually doing something. So you got to hang it up, put pomegranates in it, wait a few minutes, and say, oh, see, I put it for pomegranates. You know what? Now that it's up, I'll take the pomegranates out, and now I'll use it for straining. So that is a way around the law to make it able to do. Look, the truth is the whole reason for the law, why we said you can't hang it up, is ovadin dehol. It's a weekday type of activity. So if I'm doing it in a way that's allowed because of putting pomegranates, then it's not a weekday activity. So the whole thing is a drabanan, so this makes it better. Okay, hold on. How is this different from another case where we don't have to use an artifice like this? Want to make beer during the holiday, explain it. It's talking about Chol HaMoed. So you even on Chol HaMoed, you can't just do anything. You know, you have to do things that are relevant for the holiday. So you can make beer on the holiday for the holiday because you want to drink beer, but you can't prepare on the holiday, make beer that's after the holiday. This is a long, process. Okay. Doesn't matter what kind of beer, whether date or barley beer. However, here's how you could use a trick. Even if you have a lot of beer from an old batch, you can make a trick and say, oh, I want to drink from the new one. Okay. And so here you have a case where you can just, you can use an artifice, even though you're not doing anything during the process to show that I'm only gonna use the new one. So whereas in the first case of the pomegranates, first I have to put the pomegranates in. And only after that, then I can use it for something else. Right here, I'm not doing anything during the process before, before I'm drinking of the old one to show anything. So it's a different kind of, I'm not really doing an artifice. I'm not doing anything to show the artifice in the beer case. We say it's different. In the case of beer, no one would know whether you have old beer or you ran out of old beer. They see making beer, says, oh, he wants beer on the holiday, and so you don't need to prove anything. Whereas when you're hanging up the strainer, anyone passing by says, oh, why is he hanging up a strainer? It must be he wants to strain wine. So then you got to actually physically, proactively do something to use it for a different purpose. Okay. I always wonder about these people seeing. Is it really about other people seeing, or is it about you yourself kind of knowing in your own mind that, it's a reminder for yourself that you need to do this? Okay. Amru le Rabbanan le Rav Asher. Hazimar mor hai surmar Rabbanan. The rabbis told Rav Asher, have you seen this sage? His name was Rav Huna ben Rabbi Hayun Shemeh. Rav Huna ben Rabbi Halvan Shemeh. Okay, similar. Exactly what his name is, how you pronounce his father's name. He had a barrel, and the barrel sprung a leak. And so you can't fix a barrel on Shabbat because that's, fixing a utensil. So what did he do? He took a garlic clove and stuck it in the hole. And he says, oh, you know why I'm doing this? Because I want somewhere to store this garlic clove. Where am I going to put it? Right? I have nowhere to put it. I'll put it in this hole. And so he used an artifice. Brilliant. And so that way he was able to plug up the hole. And then after, another thing he did, the same sage, Azel Naim Naem b'mibra v'abar kisa v'sayer pere amar ana lemenam kamikavenam. He went to sleep in a boat. Now, a boat that's tied to a dock, you're actually allowed to go on it on Shabbat. It's tied to the land. And so he went and took a nap. He went to sleep on the boat, knowing that the sailor was set to go across to the other side of the river. And he wanted to be actually on the other side because he had a vineyard there and he wanted to check out his fruit and guard it. And so he went to sleep. And he says, "Oh, I'm looking for a good nap. I like, sleeping with the waves. It helps me sleep." And so then he could say that, and using that artifice, he's able to get to the other side. Okay, I'm technically going on a boat. Even if it were sailing, you're supposed to go 3 days before. You're not supposed to go on a boat that's going to sail after Wednesday. The point is that you should hopefully be able to get to your place. It ends up being a longer trip than is still allowed, but then if you land on Shabbat, you can't get off just because of Techum Shabbat. Okay. Anyway, traveling on a boat, is not permitted, but through this you can do it.
I'm a big cruiser.
What?
We take cruises all the time.
Yeah. So a cruise is allowed because you're on it for a long time, but you're just getting off. If you land somewhere on Shabbat, there's a problem.
Stay on. Yeah.
There's a problem getting off. Okay. It says They says, oh, you're talking about using an artifice? This is all this. This is a case of in the Surah Midrabanan. So you can use this kind of loophole. And furthermore, he's a Torah scholar. So a Torah scholar will know the difference between what's allowed and what's not allowed, and know that, remember that he's only allowed because he used this loophole, and he's not going to come to then next time, do it lechatechila without using the artifice. And therefore, it's good to be a sage. It's good to know your stuff, because then you're able to take advantage of these various loopholes. Whereas someone who's ignorant, we gotta just assume the lowest common denominator, because they're not gonna know how to distinguish this and that. So we have to tell them that everything is prohibited. Okay, so therefore it's good to be knowledgeable, and this sums up this whole theme where we saw from since the Agadah yesterday. In the future, people will lose Torah, and then the corrupt judges who don't and the people that they're associated with that don't know Torah, and from that we saw the answers to that they gave to that city, and they were ignorant people. And we end with this. So I think that's the theme running throughout, is the problems of being ignorant. Okay, so now we get to the next Mishnah, more details about straining. You're allowed to filter water in the dregs of wine, the wine sediment, and by doing that, the wine sediment will become clearer. So maybe it gives a little bit of flavor to the water, and that's okay. And you're also allowed to filter wine with cloth or baskets made out of palm leaves. Okay, that's all okay. So straining itself seems to depends. It depends where. Generally, if the straining is something's like already drinkable and already pretty clear, and you're just straining it for a little extra, it's okay. If the straining is really separating out things and making it from not drinkable to drinkable, then it's a problem, as we'll see. You can put an egg in a mustard strainer, and when you do that, it'll separate the yolk from the egg, and that's allowed because actually they're both edible. I suppose if you leave them in there long enough, the yolk will come out. The white will come out too, but the yolk is more liquidy, it comes out first. And also you're allowed to make this thing called anumalin. It's a kind of honey wine. It's very complicated to make, but you're still allowed to make it on Shabbat. The Biudah says you should make as little as you need. On Shabbat, just make 1 cupful. On Yom Tov, you can make a jug full. On a holiday, meaning on Chol Moed, you can make a barrel full. The Bisadok says, depends how many guests are coming over. If you have a lot of guests, then make a lot. If you otherwise, make a little. Doesn't matter when it is, but how many people there are. That's the Mishnah. Okay, this is the basic principle. Put clear wine and clear water into the strainer, so you're making it nice, a little better. That's okay. This is kind of like our Brita filters, where you're taking wine that's perfectly clear, water that's perfectly clear, and you're just putting through it, and you don't really notice hard to notice any difference. You're not taking out big pieces of things. But if it's murky, the wine beforehand, and now you're straining it, and it's good, that's the problem. Hold on, is that true? We have a beraita against that. You can take a barrel of wine, mix it up, and it gets all the dregs are mixed up with it, and then you can strain it, and you don't have to worry about that. So how's that? How do you say you're allowed to do that? That sounds like it's murky. That case was talking about between the presses. In other words, as you're manufacturing the wine before it gets to ferment, so sometimes you would drink it, but during that time it's going to be murky no matter what. It's still like grape juice, and has all the stuff in it, and so even the filtering is going to keep it murky, and so the filtering isn't doing much. People are used to drinking it in that state when it's between the presses. Good. מסננים את היין בסודרים, אמר רב שימי בר חייא, בלבד שלא יעשה גומה. It says if you do filter with the cloth, as the Mishnah says it's allowed, but you should not make a hole or like a cone. You should take the cloth and put it flat over the top of the vessel, and not like a coffee filter, where we make a cone and it all gathers up in the point of the cone, because that's the usual way that you would do it. And so if you're doing it on Shabbat, if you're straining on Shabbat, you should do it in a different way and without making that cone shape. או בחפיפה מסרית, אמר רבי חייא בר אשי אמר רב, בלבד שלא יגביה מקרקעיתו של כלי טפח. Well, you have the upper barrel you're pouring from, and then you have the basket, and then you have a lower container. So he's saying that the basket that's using as a strainer should not be high off of the lower container, because then, well, either it's making a tent or that's the usual way. So you put it low down, and that way you're doing it a different way and it's permitted on Shabbat. Amar Rav hai paronka apalge dechuba sharei akule kuba asur. You're putting this something, a strainer, a cloth on top of a barrel. You can put it on part of it, but not on the entire barrel. That's the usual way you do it when you're filtering. So don't cover the whole barrel, only half of it. Amar papa la nihadak inish desiniyata bepume dechozne dechabita mishum demechze kim shameret. But some people will do a trick, an easy workaround. Instead of getting a whole strainer, they would take the spigot of the barrel and stick some straw in it, or little pieces of things, and then it would strain or pre-strained as it comes out of the spigot. It says don't do that, because that's really like a strainer. So on a papa's house, people they would pour from cup to cup. The point is that the dregs go down to the bottom, and so you pour, and then you get all the good stuff, and then you stop pouring once you see that the dregs are there. And so that way, and you could do that a few times, and you can get some nice clear beer. And that's what they did. It was allowed. Hold on, this should also not be allowed because of the little drips. In other words, once you pour a lot, then the last bit, the last few drops, you're going to pour very carefully to get only the liquid and not the dregs, and then you're really carefully separating. It's not really like pouring, but that's more separating. So that's okay. Some say he was a beer maker himself, so he had lots of beer. Others say that he was rich, and so he didn't care about the little, he didn't care to waste those drips of liquid, and so he would pour most of it, and he would throw out the rest of the bottom of the beer. And so, because he did it that way, he would never come to really strain very carefully. And so for him, it was allowed. I think this fits with the cases before, where there are some loopholes and things that most people cannot do, but in certain cases, some people can do. And we'll end at this point, and tomorrow is more about the mustard strainer and other fun topics. Baruch Adonai Olam, Amen ve'amen. Thank you all for joining.